Hey guys, Victor here, and today I'm bringing to you another Tearlament deck profile. However, today's Tearlament deck profile is going to be different because it's going to be showcasing the adventure engine, thus, pretty much transitioning this deck from a fully fusion-based deck into a hybrid synchro and fusion variant type of deck. I think it's like a really cool and fun, unique take on the deck. However, I'm just throwing this out there. This is more of like a proof of concept instead of, like an actually competitive deck, just because like the ratios that I have in here are still really wonky, and I don't really have like a full grasp on how I want to like approach this type of deck. So just try to use this as more like a template and then expand on it with like your own ideas, and things of that nature. So with that out of the way, let's jump straight into the deck profile. Alright, so we're going to be starting off with the monster lineup, and of course, since this is a Tearlament deck, we have to play a bunch of Tearlament monsters. So we're going to be starting off with the Fusioners, being Scheiren, Merrli, and Havnis. You're only allowed to play one of each, so we only play one of each. Then, after that, we're going to be playing two Tearlaments Reinoheart. I think for this specific version, because it does focus on the adventure engine, you don't really want to play more than two, because its normal summon effect directly conflicts with being able to activate your Rite of Aramesir, because if you activate Rite of Aramesir, you can't use your normal summon monster's effects that turn. So yeah, I think 2 is perfectly fine for what this deck is trying to accomplish. And then after that, we're playing 3 Tearlaments Kashtira because it's probably the best Tearlament in the deck right now. Special summon it, mill 3. After that, we're playing 3 King of the Swamp still. Gets to your poly. It's going to be basically our kit kaloss because it helps us get into rulkaloss, and just so many other fusions like Grapha and kaleido-heart, and it's just a solid card. Then you still have to play your Shizu engine, so you have the one Agido, the one Kelbek, the one Keldo, and the one Mudora. Yeah. So not much to say, mill 5, shuffle, shuffle. But when it comes to like Mudora, it's obviously like the weakest one of the bunch. However, there's a lot of decks currently that still rely on their graveyard to function. So something like Mudora, just offering that extra little bit of shuffling can sometimes just straight up win the game. And even then, it's not the end of the world because there's a couple of cards in the extra deck that I play that give you a lot more value out of cards like Mudora and Keldo. So yeah, but we'll get to that when we get to that. For now, just you have to play them, at least in this specific version. Then after that, we're playing one Destrudo. I just like the versatility that it offers you because, it can become an Xyz play, a Synchro play, a Link play, a Fusion play. It literally does everything for the deck. And life points really don't matter anymore, so paying half your life points is literally whatever. Next up, we can focus on the adventure engine itself. So I'm going to be including the spell portion too, just because it pretty much like all flows together. So we're playing 3 Water Enchantress of the Temple. You have to play 3 just because it's going to be like your main method to actually get into your Rite of Aramesir pretty consistently. And this deck does mill a bunch of cards, so that pretty much makes this like fantastic because this card is able to banish itself from the hand or the graveyard in order to add Rite of Aramesir. And in addition to that, it's also another extender for your link plays because if you control an adventure token, you can special summon it from your hand, and then you can go into your link monsters or even like potential synchro plays. So this card alone does so much for the deck, and you definitely have to be playing 3 of it. And then for the level 7, you have a choice between a Legal Knight and Wandering Gryphon Rider, but I just opted to go with Gryphon Rider because I like the free negate that it offers you. But thanks to certain tuners that we play, a lot of the times this isn't even going to be staying on the field. But, if you have like a Mudora or Keldo engrave, you can recycle your resources and put the Gryphon Rider back and, just do those types of shenanigans, so it doesn't really matter all that much. Then for the spells, we're playing 1 Fateful Adventure. You don't really want to play more than one of those. 1 Dracoback, because it helps you out spells and traps that are floodgates, and then, it's, I guess, technically a free discard, but because this is Tearlaments, you have a bunch of free discards already that you can get or you can get rid of with your Fateful Adventures. So it's not really like dependent on like discarding Dracoback, then Dracoback's effect to come back, equip, whatever. You don't need to rely on that just because there's so many other cards that we can discard that would be a lot more beneficial. And then for the part that might be like a little controversial, I'm only playing the one Rite of Aramesir. So typically, like in an adventure deck, you'd be playing 3 Rite of Aramesir, right? Because it's going to be your go-to starter every single time. But even though this card is super good, it's not the be-all end-all of this deck. You can 100% play without it. And then because of the fact that, we're constantly milling so many cards, I really don't feel like you need to play the Rite of Aramesir because you're going to have pretty easy access, as getting a Water Enchantress in the grave is honestly not all that difficult. But and then on top of that, even if you end up like milling Rite of Aramesir, right, Water Enchantress is still able to add it back from the graveyard, and then you can still play. So I don't know. I just feel like you don't really need more than one of this. But if you want to play more, just to make sure that you can open it up more successfully, by all means, go for it. Like I said, this is pretty much just like a proof of concept. It's not like the be-all end-all for this specific version. It's just another really cool and interesting take that you can, have if you want to try something different with your Tearlament decks. Then, finally, for the final monster, we're playing 2 Evolution Synchron. I feel like this should probably be at 3, just because the combos that this enables you to do with your adventure engine is just insane. Because, well, I'll just go over the combo right now. So you activate your Rite of Aramesir, right? You get your adventure token, and you get your Fateful Adventure. Then you normal your Revolution Synchron, so you search out your Dracoback. Then after that, you can use your Fateful Adventure to search out your Wandering Gryphon Rider. You discard a card. It can be the Dracoback, or it can be something else like a sulliek or a tier monster, whatever. But you special summon your Wandering Gryphon Rider after. You Revolution Synchro with your Wandering Gryphon Rider for Baron de Fleur, which is a level 10. Then your Revolution Synchron will be able to bring itself back, and you can sync with the Revolution Synchron and the Adventure token into Naturia Beast, because this is an Earth, the token's an Earth, and Naturia Beast. Sometimes you can just straight up win the game on its own. It's a really easy to pull off the generic combo, but it's not like it's exclusive to this deck. Pretty much every adventure synchro pile is doing that. But when you combine that with the Tearlament aspect of the deck, being able to summon like rulkaloss, gryphon, and all these other nonsense shenanigans, it gets really oppressive really fast. So it's something really cool to consider. And with that, that's the monster lineup, and now we can finally move on to the spell and trap portion of the deck. Now when it comes to the spells and traps, it's not really anything that revolutionary. It's pretty straightforward. You play your 3 Primeval Planet Perlereinos, you play 2 Tearlaments Scream. 3 is, still really solid, but you can get away with playing 2. You play 2 Foolish Burial Goods, 1 Tearlaments Grief, the 1 Polymerization, the 1 Terraforming, the 1 Foolish Burial, the 1 Tuning to help you, dig through your deck for your Revolution Synchrons. And I really like Tuning just because it also like mills an additional card, but I don't really know if you can afford to play more than one, just because there's so many people main decking cards like Droll and Lockbird right now. So I wanted to be like really selective with the cards that actually search in this deck, because a lot of the times you don't really want to have Tuning be your search. You'd rather it be a search off your Fateful Adventure to get your Wandering Gryphon Rider, or a Primeval Planet Perlereino to get any tier monster. But it's still a really insane card for what it does. Then that's it for the spells, and then we still play a couple traps. Just 2 sulliek and the 1 Trivikarma. Not much to say, pretty straightforward, but they get the job done. And with that, that's the spell and trap lineup, and now we can finally move on to the real spice, which is the extra deck portion. Now before we get to the exciting portion of the extra deck, we're gonna have to go through the boring stuff. So we're gonna be doing the one-time Thief Redoer, just a good generic rank 4 Xyz. You overlay your Scheiren or your Reinohearts together, and then you detach your Scheiren for effect to get the fusion summon, and the rest is history. Then for the links, just the 1 Cross Sheep along with the 1 Underworld Goddess. Cross Sheep helps a lot with extending your plays, and Underworld Goddess is for those decks that have like untouchable boss monsters, such as like Perley if they have like the Noir on the field or whatever, with like +5 materials, and just countless other decks, because there are a lot of like problematic cards that this deck doesn't really out all that easily. Then we play fusions, so we play the 1 Mudragon of the Swamp along with the 1 Predaplant Dragostapelia. I opted to cut Garura as like the 3rd honorary super play target, just because the extra deck needed a lot of space for what I wanted to show off. And even though it's not in the main extra deck, it's still in the side. So if you do end up siding super polys, with the Garura. You can just easily, you know, swap between the two, because there's one card in here that I really wanted to fit that is really good for going first, but it's terrible for going second. So you just swap that with the Garura, and then you continue to play. Then you play your, you know, your King of the Swamp targets, or, you know, so that's one Grapha, Dragon Overlord of Dark World, one rulkaloss, and one kaleido-heart. Standard stuff. And for the final fusion, we're playing Guardian Chimera. Now, for the rest of these cards, they're all synchro monsters, and I really enjoy like what they offer for the deck. So the first one we're going to be talking about is Naturia Beast. So I already explained the combo earlier, where Rite of Aramesir plus Revolution Synchron equals instant Naturia Beast plus Baron de Fleur. And while that combo is really good, it does have weaknesses, of course, as your opponent could just have the Dark Ruler no more, which does happen sometimes. Imperm, Forbidden Droplet, you know, things of that nature. Even, you know, having a Bestial in their hand, for example, they just reveal Bestial, special summon it, then they just run over the Naturia Beast, or if it's like Druiswarm, if it leaves the field, they'll send the Naturia Beast and then continue on with their plays. So while it is, you know, very degenerate in what it can do, it's not a guaranteed win, but it's pretty close. And as for the card that I was mentioning that you swap out with Garura, it's Naturia Beast. Just because if you're going second, your opponent's pretty much already guaranteed to have used all their spells that they wanted to use. So this card's pretty much dead for the most part. So like I said, if you're putting in the Garura, you take this out if you know, like you want to include super polys. If not, you just leave this in, you break your opponent's board, you break your opponent's board, set up Naturia Beast, and if they top deck a spell, good for you. Then the next synchro monsters, pretty standard as far as like, you know, the decks go. So you have the one Ancient Fairy Dragon with the Visas Amritara. This is, you know, the basic bread and butter combo for Tearlament with synchros, even if it's not like a dedicated synchro deck. As long as you have Revolution Synchron at a level 4, you have insta access to Amritara, which gets you into any Tearlament spell or trap card because they all have Visa Starfrost in the text. And then for the level 10, we play Baron de Fleur. But that's not it for the synchros. I still have two more that I think have like a lot of really cool potential. And the first one I'm going to talk about is Shooting Riser Dragon. So this is a level 7 dragon, so that means it's, you know, summonable off of cards such as Revolution Synchron or Destrudo, just copying any monster to change its level and then you synchro for 7. And I think it's really cool with what it can do, just because it's a Foolish Burial, and it changes its level, you know, depending on the card. So your main target for Shooting Riser Dragon is actually going to be King of the Swamp. So you go Shooting Riser Dragon, send King of the Swamp, and then it becomes a level 4, so you can go for a level 8 plays. You can go for a rank 4 play. You can do just so many different cool things with level modulation because of this card. And even if you don't send King of the Swamp, right, there's plenty of other targets that you can send, such as your Shizu Shufflers, right? If you've already set up your field and you're feeling pretty confident, you go Shooting Riser Dragon, send in a Shizu Shuffler, whether it's Mudora or Keldo, doesn't really matter, it becomes level 3. And you can still do other stuff too, and then by becoming a level 3, you can synchro summon it with cards such as Tearlaments Kashtira, which is a level 7, or your Wandering Gryphon Rider into a Baron de Fleur. And I don't know, like I definitely think this card has like a lot of potential for what it can do. And I wouldn't be surprised if future Tearlament players like adopt playing this even outside of like the specific synchro version, just because it does a lot of really cool things for the deck that you know, aren't typically offered just because of the controlled mills. And for the final synchro monster, we're playing one Ciphering Lord Omega. I really, really, really like this card in this deck, and I constantly find myself looking for another level 8. So you have a lot of choices, right? You can play Ciphering Lord Omega. You can play Dragite if you want to negate spells and traps. You can also play Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon if you want to negate monster effects. But I really like what Omega offers to this deck because of a couple things. So the first thing that I really like about Omega is it's able to shuffle or, you know, return cards from your banish zone back into your grave. So what this means, right, is you can be a lot more greedy with your Shizu Shufflers, especially like Keldo and Mudora, you know, banish it during your own turn, shuffle back your resources back into the deck, and then during your opponent's turn, Omega will return the Shizu monster back to your graveyard in order for you to be able to reuse it. And you can apply that, you know, logic to a lot of other cards such as like Trivikarma as well, right? Trivikarma returns back, and then you can banish it to add any Tearlament spell or trap, And then from there, if you have like a Reinoheart under like a Time Thief Redoer, you pretty much just gave yourself free fodder to be able to activate your Reinohearts. So there's like a lot of really cool stuff you can do with that. And then in addition to that, it loops a card out of your opponent's hand. And in a deck like this, where you're constantly setting up so many negates and interruptions, a hand loop on top of all that can straight up just seal the game, which is why I prefer something like Cypher Lord Omega over, Crystal Wing or Dragite. And, if somehow your opponent's able to out this, you can just return it back to the extra deck and shuffle back another card as well. So there's so many cool things that this deck can do. And I don't know, I just really enjoy it, but I don't think it's the most optimal, not yet anyways. I'm sure someone will be able to create a much more well-designed deck than I, because who am I? I'm no authority on this, obviously. I just like building decks. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya!